The medical room was white and clean like everything else on Haven's Rest space station. WarHFY sat in a chair that was too small for his body. His blue scales were dull and cracked in places where the healing patches couldn't reach. Dark bruises covered his arms and neck. His large black eyes looked tired and afraid. Dr. Hansel sat across from him with a data pad in her hands. She was young for a human doctor, maybe 30 years old. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple style. She wore the standard medical uniform of Haven's Rest, white coat with the neutral zone symbol on the sleeve. "Please tell me your name and rank," she said softly. Her voice was kind, but Kale knew humans could sound kind even when they were planning something terrible. WarHFY, Communications Officer 3rd Class, Kaleth Imperial Navy. His voice sounded like water moving over rocks. All Nathari spoke that way because of their water-world origins. Behind the one-way glass, 2 humans watched. Jiwoo was tall and thin, wearing the dark blue uniform of Terran military intelligence. His face showed no expression as he studied the alien. Beside him, Coordinator Yeon-Soo wore civilian clothes, the gray and gold of the diplomatic corps. "The war is over," Yeon-Soo said quietly to Jiwoo. "Why are we still doing these interviews?" Jiwoo didn't look away from Kale. "Because something doesn't add up. The Kaleth Empire was winning for 2 years. Then suddenly they surrender after one battle. That doesn't make sense." In the medical room, Dr. Hansol was asking about Kale's service record. He had worked on communication systems for 8 years. He knew how to fix broken transmitters and decode enemy signals. Nothing special. Nothing that would make him important. "Tell me about the last battle," Dr. Hansol said. "The one at Zerion Nebula." Kale's hands began to shake. The trembling spread up his arms to his shoulders. Dr. Hansol noticed and made a note on her pad. "I don't want to remember that," Kale said. "The war is over now. You're safe here. No one can hurt you on Haven's Rest." Kyle laughed, but it sounded more like crying. "Safe? You think any of us are safe now? You don't understand what your people are." Dr. Hansol frowned. "What do you mean?" "Humans lost the war. Your empire won. That's why you're here for medical treatment instead of in a prison." "That's what everyone thinks," Kale said. His voice got quieter. "That's what we thought too." Until the end. Behind the glass, Jiwoo leaned forward. This was new. In all the other interviews, Kaleth survivors had talked about their great victory. They had been proud, even when they were prisoners. Kale was different. "Tell me what happened," Dr. Hansol said. Kale closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were full of terror. "We thought we had won the greatest battle in Kaleth history. War Commander Threx was so happy. He said the humans were finally broken. He said the galaxy would remember this day forever. That sounds like a good thing for your people." "It was supposed to be." Kale's scales started to change color, turning darker blue. Dr. Hansol had studied Nathari biology. Dark blue meant fear, but then I started noticing things. Strange signals during the battle. Patterns that didn't make sense. The humans were talking to each other, but not with normal military codes. "What kind of signals?" "I don't know. I was just a communications officer, but I knew enough to tell when something was wrong. The humans weren't fighting the way they usually fought. They were too organized, too prepared." Dr. Hansol made more notes. "Can you describe the battle itself?" Kale was quiet for a long time. His breathing got faster and shallower. Dr. Hansol checked his medical readings on her pad. His heart rate was going up. "It was beautiful," he finally said. "That's the terrible part. It was the most beautiful battle I had ever seen. The human ships moved like dancers. Even when we were destroying them, they moved like it was planned." "Planned how?" "Like they knew exactly what we would do. Like they had practiced this exact battle before." Kale's voice was barely a whisper now. War Commander Threx was so proud. He kept saying how perfectly our attack was working. How the humans were doing exactly what Kaleth Battle Doctrine predicted they would do. Behind the glass, Jiwoo and Yeon-Soo looked at each other. That was strange. Battle plans never worked perfectly. There were always surprises, always changes. "How many ships did each side have?" Dr. Hansol asked. "We had 300 ships. The humans had 30. 30? Dr. Hansol couldn't hide her surprise. "That's not very many. That's what we thought. That's why War Commander Threx was so confident. 30 ships against 300 should have been a quick victory. But it wasn't quick? No, it took hours. The humans made us work for every kill. They never gave up. They never ran away. They just kept fighting until all 30 ships were destroyed. Dr. Hansol was confused. If the humans lost all their ships, how did they win the war? Kale's scales went from dark blue to almost black. That's the question, isn't it? How did they win a war by losing a battle? I don't understand, neither did we. Not until 3 days later. Kyle's whole body was shaking now. That's when we learned the truth. That's when we realized what the humans had really done. What had they done? They had studied us. The words came out like a confession. For months, maybe years, they had been studying us. Learning how we think. Learning how we fight. Learning everything about us. Dr. Hansol put down her pad. Kale, you're not making sense. How could losing a battle be part of studying you? Because they didn't lose, Kale said. They sacrificed 30 ships and thousands of their own people just to watch us fight. To see how we react under pressure. To test their theories about Kaleth military thinking. The room was very quiet. Behind the glass, Jiwoo's face had gone pale. They turned the whole battle into an experiment, Kale continued. We were the test subjects. Every move we made, every decision War Commander Threx made, every communication we sent, they were recording all of it. Studying all of it. That's impossible, Dr. Hansol said, but her voice didn't sound certain. Is it? Kale looked directly at her. Your people study everything, don't they? Plants, animals, weather, stars. Why not other species? Why not their enemies? Dr. Hansol didn't answer. She couldn't answer. 3 days after our great victory, Kale said, the real human fleet appeared. Ships we had never seen before. Technology we had never imagined. And they knew exactly how to fight us. They knew because they had watched us fight for hours at Xerion Nebula. What happened then? Kale's scales turned completely black. Then we learned what it really means to be studied by humans. The Kaleth fleet arrived at Xerion Nebula like a storm of metal and fire, 300 warships, the largest battle group the Empire had ever assembled. War Commander Threx Mandok stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought Void's hammer. His forearms crossed in satisfaction as he watched the tactical display. There, he said to his officers, pointing at the small cluster of human ships hiding behind a dead planet. 30 ships. Is this really all that remains of human military power? Cal worked at his communication station, monitoring all the radio signals in the area. The humans were talking to each other, but their messages were encrypted. Still, he could tell they were nervous. Their transmission patterns showed stress and fear. War Commander, said Fleet Coordinator Gex Valmore, our scouts confirmed the human fleet composition. 1 heavy cruiser designated Indomitable, 12 destroyers, 17 smaller vessels. No reinforcements detected within 50 light years. Threx laughed, a sound like breaking glass. The mighty Terran Federation, reduced to 30 ships hiding behind a rock. Begin the attack. Make it slow. I want them to suffer before they die. On the human flagship Indomitable, Admiral Lee Dong-hyun watched the Kaleth fleet spread into attack formation. His bridge crew was quiet and focused. Captain Park Sora stood beside his command chair, her face calm despite the impossible odds. Sir, said Lieutenant Commander Kim Taemin from the tactical station, they're using Formation 7 just like the intelligence reports predicted. Excellent, Admiral Lee said quietly. Chief Engineer Bae Minji, how are our systems? All recording equipment is functioning perfectly, sir, came the reply from engineering. Every sensor is active. We're getting detailed readings on their weapons, shields, and movement patterns. Captain Park looked at the tactical display. They're taking their time, sir. Probably want to study our defensive capabilities before they finish us. Admiral Lee smiled, but there was no humor in it. Let them study. We're studying them too. The battle began exactly as Kaleth military doctrine said it should. The larger fleet surrounded the smaller one. Heavy ships moved to block escape routes while lighter vessels prepared to attack from multiple angles. It was a perfect example of Kaleth tactical thinking, overwhelming force applied with precision. Kale watched his instruments as the first exchange of fire began. The human ships fought well, but they were clearly outmatched. Their weapons were good, but not good enough. Their shields held for a while, but Kaleth firepower was too strong. Pattern recognition is working perfectly, War Commander Threx announced. The humans are doing exactly what the tactical computers predicted. They're trying to use the planet's gravity to help their maneuvers. They're concentrating fire on our lead ships. They're attempting to break through our formation at the weakest point. Everything was going according to plan. The humans fought bravely, but bravery couldn't overcome mathematics. 30 ships could not defeat 300 ships, no matter how skilled the crews were. Cal noticed something strange about the human communications. Even as their ships were being destroyed, their radio discipline remained perfect. No panic, no confused orders. Every transmission was calm and professional. "That's odd," he muttered to himself. "What's odd?" asked his supervisor, communications coordinator Vex Thaloran. "The human communications, sir. They're not acting like people who are losing a battle." Vex checked his own instruments. "They're dying just fine. Look at the tactical display. We've destroyed 8 of their ships already." Cale looked at the display. It was true. Human ships were exploding in beautiful flowers of fire and metal, but something still felt wrong. "Sir, listen to this." He played a recording of human radio traffic from 10 minutes earlier. Admiral Lee's voice came through the speakers. "All ships, execute maneuver Delta 7. Repeat Delta 7. Now listen to this one from 5 minutes ago," Cale said, playing another recording. Captain Park's voice. "Destroyer Group 2, maintain current formation. Do not break pattern until signal Theta." Vex frowned. "What am I supposed to hear?" "They're not fighting to win, sir. They're fighting to perform, like actors in a play." "Don't be ridiculous," Vex said. "Humans don't sacrifice their own people for theater." But Cale kept listening. The more he heard, the more convinced he became. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were demonstrating something. Every maneuver they made was clean and obvious. Every tactical decision was textbook perfect. "It's like they want us to see exactly how they fight," Cale said. On the Indomitable, Admiral Lee watched another destroyer explode. That was half his fleet gone. But the mission was working perfectly. Every Calith ship was exactly where the computers had predicted they would be. Every weapon they fired was being recorded and analyzed. "Sir," Lieutenant Commander Kim reported, "we're getting excellent data on their plasma cannon reload times. Also detailed scans of their shield frequency rotations." "Outstanding," Admiral Lee said. "Captain Park, how much longer do we need?" Captain Park checked her instruments. "Engineering says another 20 minutes for complete weapons analysis. 30 minutes for full tactical doctrine mapping." Admiral Lee nodded. "Signal all ships. We hold for 30 more minutes." Chief Engineer Bay's voice came over the comm. "Sir, the recording systems are getting incredible data. We now know the exact capabilities of every major Calith ship class, their reaction times, their preferred formations, even the decision-making patterns of their commanders." The battle continued. More human ships died, but each death brought precious information. Every Calith attack revealed their strengths and weaknesses. Every formation change showed how they adapted to different situations. War Commander Threx was enjoying himself. "Look how they fight," he told his officers. "Even facing certain death, they maintain formation. They follow orders. I almost respect them." "Shall we finish them quickly, War Commander?" asked Fleet Coordinator Gex. "No, let them show us everything they can do. When we conquer Earth, I want to know exactly how humans fight when they're desperate." Cale shivered. Something about this felt like a trap, but he couldn't figure out what kind of trap. The humans were definitely losing. Their ships were definitely being destroyed. Real people were definitely dying, but the way they died seemed too organized. Finally, only the Indomitable remained. Admiral Lee stood on his bridge, surrounded by smoke and sparks from damaged systems. Most of his crew was dead or wounded, but the mission was complete. "All data transmitted," reported the last surviving communications officer. Admiral Lee activated the ship-wide comm system. "War Commander Threx, this is Admiral Lee Dong-hyun of the Terran Federation. I formally surrender my ship and crew." Threx accepted the surrender graciously. It had been a perfect battle. The humans had fought exactly as Calith military theory said they would fight. Every prediction had been correct. Every tactical model had been proven. "Kyle," Vex said as they watched the Indomitable power down its weapons, "prepare a full battle report. High Command will want to study this engagement." Cale nodded, but his scales were still pale with worry. "Sir, what if they were studying us too?" Vex laughed. "With what? They're all dead or captured. How could dead people study anything?" Cale didn't have an answer. But deep in his mind, a terrible thought was growing. What if the 30 ships at Zarian Nebula hadn't been the human fleet? What if they had been something else entirely? What if they had been a test? 3 days after the victory at Zarian Nebula, Kale was working the night shift on communications when the universe changed forever. He was alone in the communications center of the Void's Hammer, monitoring routine traffic between Kaleth fleets. Most of the crew was celebrating. War Commander Threx had declared 3 days of victory festivities. The humans were defeated. The galaxy belonged to the Kaleth Empire. The first alarm came from the outer colonies. Emergency transmission from Kelvar Prime, Kyle announced to the mostly empty bridge. Only a skeleton crew was on duty. Everyone else was at the victory celebration in the main hall. "What is it?" asked Knight Commander Mex Thorian, barely looking up from his reports. Kale's scales went pale as he read the message. "Sir, Kelvar Prime is under attack. Pirates?" Mex asked, still not paying attention. "No, sir. It's a human fleet. A big one." Now Mex looked up. "That's impossible. We destroyed their fleet 3 days ago." Kyle's hands were shaking as more messages flooded in. "Sir, I'm getting emergency signals from 12 different systems. All of them report human attacks." Mex stood up and walked over to Kale's station. His face went white as he read the reports. "Get War Commander Threx now." Within minutes, the bridge was full of officers. War Commander Threx arrived still wearing his ceremonial victory armor. His forearms moved quickly as he studied the tactical displays. "This must be a mistake," he said. "We destroyed the human fleet. I watched it happen." "Sir," Kale said, his voice barely a whisper, "the ships attacking our colonies. They're not the same ships we fought at Zerion." "What do you mean?" "Different designs. Different energy signatures. Different everything. These are ships we've never seen before." Fleet Coordinator Gex pulled up the sensor records from Zerion Nebula. The human ships we destroyed were older models. Standard Terran Federation designs. These new ships are something else. War Commander Threx stared at the displays. 12 Kaleth systems under simultaneous attack. Hundreds of human ships that shouldn't exist. Technologies that didn't match any intelligence reports. How is this possible? He asked. Kyle had been thinking about this for 3 days. Now he had an answer and it terrified him. "Sir, what if the fleet at Zerion wasn't their main force? What if it was a sacrifice? A sacrifice for what?" "To study us." The bridge went silent. Every officer looked at Kale like he had said something impossible. "Think about it," Kale continued, his words coming faster now. "They let us win too easily. They fought exactly like our tactical computers predicted they would fight. Every move they made was perfectly predictable. Because we're better strategists than they are," War Commander Threx said. "Or because they wanted us to think we were." Kale's scales were getting darker with fear. "Sir, what if they were recording everything? What if they were learning how we fight, how we think, how we make decisions?" More emergency messages flooded in. The human attacks were unlike anything in Kaleth military history. They weren't just random raids, they were perfectly coordinated strikes hitting exactly the right targets at exactly the right times. Communications Coordinator Vex to the bridge came an announcement. Vex arrived running. "War Commander, I've been analyzing the human attack patterns. They're hitting our supply depots, our communication relays, our repair facilities. It's like they know exactly which targets would hurt us most." "That's standard military thinking," War Commander Threx said, but his voice didn't sound convinced. "No, sir," Vex said. "They're not just hitting military targets. They're hitting specific facilities that would prevent us from adapting to their new tactics. They know exactly how our supply chains work. They know our response procedures. They know everything." Kale felt sick. "Sir, I need to show you something." He pulled up the communication records from the Zerion battle. "Listen to this human transmission from right before they surrendered." Admiral Lee's voice filled the bridge. "All data transmitted successfully. Mission parameters achieved." "Data transmitted," Kyle repeated. "Not final orders or goodbye messages, data." The implications hit everyone at once. The battle at Zerion Nebula hadn't been a last stand. It had been an intelligence operation. The humans had sacrificed 30 ships and thousands of lives just to watch the Kaleth Empire reveal its military capabilities. "That's impossible," War Commander Threx said. "No species would sacrifice their own people for information." "Humans would," said a new voice. Everyone turned. War Coordinator Gex Valmore had arrived with a data pad full of intelligence reports. His expression was grim. "I've been reviewing everything we know about human psychology," Gex said. "They're not like us. They don't think like us. Where we see honor in battle, they see problems to solve. Where we see glory in victory, they see data to collect. He activated his pad, showing psychological profiles of human military leaders. Look at their history. Humans have been studying warfare for thousands of years. Not just fighting wars, but studying them, learning from them, turning every battle into a lesson for the next battle. But the cost, War Commander Threx said. 30 ships, thousands of lives, a small price for defeating an entire empire, Gex replied. While we were celebrating our victory, they were analyzing every second of the battle. They know how fast our ships turn, how long our weapons take to reload, how our officers make decisions under pressure. Kyle looked at the tactical displays showing the human attacks. They're not fighting us like enemies, sir. They're fighting us like specimens, like things in a laboratory. More reports came in. The human fleets were moving with impossible coordination. Every Kalith defensive move was anticipated and countered. Every attempt to adapt to human tactics was met with a new human adaptation. It's like they can read our minds, Vex said. They can, Kale realized. They recorded everything at Zerion. Every decision we made, every reaction we had, every thought pattern our commanders followed. They fed it all into their computers and built a perfect model of how Kalith officers think. War Commander Threx sat down heavily in his command chair. Then how do we fight them? I don't think we can, Gex said quietly. They've turned war into science. Every move we make just gives them more data. Every battle we fight just makes their model more accurate. The communication board lit up with more emergency signals. Human fleets were appearing everywhere, striking with surgical precision. They weren't trying to conquer territory. They were systematically destroying the Kalith Empire's ability to fight back. Sir, Kale said, his voice barely audible. There's something else. What? The timing. They waited exactly 3 days after Zarian. Why 3 days? The officers looked at each other. No one had an answer. Because that's how long they needed, Kale said. 3 days to analyze all the data from the battle. 3 days to build their tactical models. 3 days to plan these attacks. You're saying they planned this entire operation in 3 days? War Commander Threx asked. No, sir. I'm saying they planned this entire operation before Zarian ever happened. They just needed 3 days to customize it based on what they learned about us. The truth settled over the bridge like a cold fog. The humans hadn't won a war. They had completed an experiment, and the Kalith Empire had been the test subject. What do we do? Vex asked. War Commander Threx looked at the displays showing human fleets destroying Kalith forces across the galaxy. We surrender, he said, before they decide to study how we die. The human assault on the Kelvar system wasn't like any battle Kale had ever heard about. As communications officer, he listened to every desperate report from the colony defenders. What he heard made his scales turn black with terror. They're not trying to destroy everything, reported Commander Thex Valdris from Kelvar Prime's orbital defense station. They're being selective. War Commander Threx stood over Kale's station, listening to the transmissions. What do you mean, selective? They're targeting specific systems, sir. Not the weapons that would kill us fastest, but the ones that would prevent us from learning how to fight them. They hit our tactical computers first, then our communication networks, then our repair facilities. Fleet Admiral Choi Hyunwoo commanded the human forces attacking Kelvar. His ships moved like a pack of hunters who had studied their prey for years. Each human vessel knew exactly where to strike for maximum effect. Target the sensor array on Platform 7, came Admiral Choi's calm voice over the intercepted human communications. We need to blind them before they can adapt to our new weapon configurations. Kyle shivered. The humans weren't just attacking, they were preventing the Kalith from learning. Every strike was designed to keep the defenders from understanding what was happening to them. Captain Nam Yoon Jung led a destroyer squadron that systematically dismantled the Kelvar defense network. But she didn't destroy the platforms. Instead, she disabled them in very specific ways. Disable power coupling 7 on each station, she ordered her crews. Leave life support intact, but eliminate their ability to coordinate with other units. Why are they keeping the defenders alive? War Commander Threx asked. Kale had been analyzing the human attack patterns. The answer made him sick. Because live defenders who can't communicate are more frightening than dead ones, sir. The survivors will spread fear to other systems. That's psychological warfare. Yes, sir, but not the kind we understand. They're not trying to make us afraid of dying. They're trying to make us afraid of being studied. The most terrifying part was how much the humans knew about Kaleth's psychology. Dr. Shin Hye-jin, a human xenobiologist, appeared on intercepted communications giving real-time advice to the attack fleet. Kaleth's stress responses peak after 17 minutes of sustained threat. Her voice said calmly, "Recommend increasing attack pressure now to maximize psychological impact." Kale played the recording for War Commander Threx. "Sir, they have scientists telling their military exactly how to hurt us emotionally. How could they know that much about us? They've been watching us, sir, for years, maybe decades. Every time we've fought other species, every time we've been in battle, they were somewhere recording and studying. More reports came in from other systems under attack. The pattern was always the same. Human forces would arrive with perfect knowledge of local defenses. They would strike with surgical precision, disabling rather than destroying, and they would leave survivors who could report what happened. Commander Yu Jae-sung led boarding operations on 3 different Kaleth stations. His teams moved through Kaleth corridors like they had blueprints of every room. They knew where the command centers were, where the weapon storage was, even where the crew quarters were located. "Boarding Team Alpha to command," came Yu's voice over the communications. "Proceeding to auxiliary control. Kaleth defensive positions are exactly where intelligence predicted. How could they know our ship layouts?" Communications Coordinator Vex asked in horror. Kale had been thinking about this. "Sir, remember all those human traders who visited our worlds? All those human researchers who studied our technology? What if they weren't really traders and researchers?" The implication was terrifying. If humans had been infiltrating Kaleth space for years, posing as harmless civilians, then they would know everything about Kaleth ship designs, base layouts, even cultural practices. Captain Ryu Sung-ho commanded a specialist unit that seemed to know the service record of every Kaleth officer they encountered. When they boarded the defense station at Zarak Prime, they didn't just capture anyone. They captured specific officers with specific knowledge. "We need the communications specialist from the 3rd shift," Ryu told his team, "the one with experience in deep space relay protocols. His name is Kex Thorian. He'll be in Section 7, Compartment 12. They were right. Kex Thorian was exactly where they said he would be. "They know our personnel files," War Commander Threx said in disbelief. "They know who works where and what they know." "Sir," Kyle said, his voice shaking, "I think they know more than that. Listen to this." He played another intercepted transmission. A human officer was talking to his subordinates. "The Kaleth commander on the station is War Captain Hex Valderin. He graduated from the Imperial War College 15 years ago. He specializes in defensive strategies. He has 2 weaknesses. He's overconfident in his shields and he panics when his communication systems go down. Hit the comm array first." The attack proceeded exactly as the human predicted. War Captain Hex tried to reinforce his shields when he should have been calling for help. When his communications failed, he made panicked decisions that the humans were ready to counter. "They've studied individual officers," War Commander Threx said. "They know how we think, how we fight, how we react under pressure." "It's worse than that, sir," Kale said. "They've studied our entire culture. Listen to this one." Another recording. "Kaleth honor codes require them to defend their positions even when retreat would be smarter. Use this against them. Force them into situations where their culture demands they make tactically poor decisions." The humans were using Kaleth traditions as weapons. They would attack in ways that forced Kaleth commanders to choose between smart tactics and cultural honor. Every time the Kaleth chose honor, the humans were ready to punish them for it. Lieutenant Commander An Mi-young led a unit that seemed to understand Kaleth social structures perfectly. "The crew on this ship will not surrender while their war commander is alive," she told her team. "But if we capture the war commander alive and treat him with respect, the crew will follow his orders to surrender." She was right. When they captured War Commander Kex Thalion and showed him proper military courtesy, he ordered his entire crew to lay down their weapons. The humans had turned Kaleth respect for authority into a tool for conquest. "They're not just defeating us," War Commander Threx said. "They're using everything we believe in against us." Colonel Park Jun-ho interrogated captured Kaleth officers, but not for military secrets. He asked them about their families, their hopes, their fears. He wanted to understand how Kaleth minds worked. "Tell me about your home world," he said to captured War Captain Gex Thaloran. "What do you miss most about it?" "Why do you care?" Jax asked. Because understanding what motivates your people helps us end this war faster. The sooner we understand each other, the sooner the killing stops. But Kel knew better. The humans weren't trying to end the killing. They were trying to make it more efficient. Every answer they got made their psychological models more accurate. The worst part was how calm the humans sounded. They weren't angry or hateful. They talked about destroying Kalith civilization the way they might talk about solving a math problem. Kalith defensive doctrine relies heavily on centralized command structures, came one analysis. Disrupting their communication networks reduces their effectiveness by an average of 67%. Kalith morale drops significantly when they believe their enemies have superior technology. Recommend displaying new weapon systems prominently during initial attacks. Kalith officers will sacrifice their lives to protect civilian populations. This can be exploited by threatening non-military targets. They had turned empathy into a weakness to exploit. Everything good about Kalith culture became a tool for human victory. "Sir," Kale said to War Commander Threx, "we need to surrender. Not because we can't fight, but because fighting them just gives them more data about us." Data for what? Kyle's scales were completely black now. For whatever they want to do next. "Sir, I don't think this war was ever about territory or resources. I think it was about learning how to defeat us." "Defeat us for what purpose?" "I don't know, sir. But I know that every minute we keep fighting is another minute they spend studying us. And humans never stop learning." When the human boarding teams reached the Void's hammer, Kale finally understood what true terror felt like. The attack on their ship began like all the others, with impossible precision. The humans knew exactly which sections to hit to disable the ship's weapons without destroying it. They wanted the Void's hammer intact, specifically because it carried the Empire's most advanced communication systems. "They're after our communication array," War Commander Threx announced as explosions rocked the ship. "They want to study our technology." Kyle watched his instruments as human ships surrounded them.
"Sir, they're not just studying our technology.
"They're studying us." Staff Sergeant Oh Chan-woo led the first boarding team through the ship's corridors. His soldiers moved like they had memorized the layout years ago. They knew where every door led, where every defensive position would be, even where the crew would try to hide. "Proceed to Section 7, Oh's voice came through their helmets. "Intelligence reports the primary communication station is located there. The officer we need should be at Station 3. They were talking about Kale. Somehow they knew exactly who he was and where he worked. Kale's scales went pale as he listened to the humans talking to each other. They weren't discussing tactics or strategies. They were discussing Kalith anatomy and psychology like scientists studying laboratory animals. "Remember, Kalith fear responses are triggered by threats to their communication abilities," said Corporal Kim Da-eun as she checked her weapon. "Target their radio equipment first. It will make them more cooperative." "Why do they sound so calm?" Kale asked War Commander Threx. "Because they're not angry," Threx replied, his own voice shaking. "They're working." The human soldiers fought their way through the ship's defenses with clinical efficiency. When they encountered Kalith security teams, they didn't just defeat them, they defeated them in very specific ways. Private Lee Soo-young disabled a Kalith warrior by striking 3 precise nerve points that caused temporary paralysis. Kalith nervous systems respond predictably to pressure at these locations, she explained to her team. Unconsciousness lasts approximately 47 minutes. How could she know that? War Commander Threx asked in horror. Kale had been monitoring human communications throughout the war. Now the pieces were falling into place. "Sir, they've been experimenting on prisoners. Every Kalith they've captured, they've been studying, learning our biology, our psychology, everything." The humans reached the communication center where Kale was hiding with 2 other officers. When the door exploded inward, Kale expected to see soldiers filled with battle fury. Instead, he saw calm professionals doing a job. Staff Sergeant Oh looked directly at Kale. Communications Officer Kale Vorthak, 3rd class rating, 8-year service, specialist in long-range signal analysis. Kale's blood turned to ice. "How do you know my name?" "We know everything about you," Oh replied matter-of-factly. "Your service record, your family background, your psychological profile. You're exactly the person we need to help us understand Kalith communication protocols." "I won't help you." Corporal Kim smiled, but it wasn't a cruel smile. It was the smile of someone who already knew how the conversation would end. You will. Because we understand exactly how your mind works, she was right. Within an hour, Kale was explaining Kalith communication systems in detail. Not because they tortured him, but because they knew exactly what to say to make him want to cooperate. Your ship is disabled, Colonel Park Junho explained to Kale in a calm, reasonable voice. Your crew is captured. The war is effectively over. The only question now is whether the transition happens smoothly or violently. If you help us understand your communication systems, Park continued, we can establish proper diplomatic channels. We can end this war without more bloodshed. It sounded reasonable. It sounded humanitarian. It took Kale several hours to realize he was being manipulated by experts who had studied Kalith psychology for years. You made me want to help, Kale said when he finally understood. Yes, Park replied. We know that Kalith individuals prioritize group survival over personal honor when presented with logical arguments. We know how to appeal to your better nature. You've turned our virtues into weapons. We've studied your culture extensively. We know what motivates you, what frightens you, what makes you cooperate. It's not personal, Kale, it's just efficient. That was the most terrifying part. The humans weren't motivated by hatred or revenge. They were motivated by curiosity and efficiency. They studied other species the way Kale might study a broken radio, with interest, but without emotion. Lieutenant Commander An Mi-young interviewed other captured crew members, but her questions weren't about military secrets. She wanted to understand how Kalith society worked. Tell me about your family structure, she asked Communications Coordinator Vex. How do decisions get made in Kalith households? Why does that matter? Because understanding your social systems helps us govern occupied territories more effectively. If we know how your people naturally organize themselves, we can work with those patterns instead of against them. Vex was horrified. You're planning to rule us? We're planning to coexist with you. But coexistence requires understanding. The more we know about how your minds work, the better we can design systems that make both our species happy. Kale listened to these conversations and realized something terrible. The humans weren't conquerors in any traditional sense. They were researchers. They wanted to understand other species completely, not to destroy them, but to control them perfectly. They're not trying to kill us, he told War Commander Threx during a brief moment when they were alone. They're trying to domesticate us. What do you mean? Think about it, sir. They study our psychology, our culture, our biology. They learn exactly how we think and what we want. Then they design systems that give us what we want while serving their purposes. War Commander Threx looked around at their human captors. They were treating the Kalith prisoners well. Not out of mercy, but because they had calculated that good treatment would produce better cooperation. They're farming us, Threx said in horror, like we farm food animals. Captain Ryu Sung-ho confirmed their worst fears during a casual conversation with Kyle. Your species has a lot of potential, he said. Good engineering skills, strong work ethic, natural aptitude for communication systems. With proper guidance, Kalith civilization could become very prosperous. Guidance from humans? Of course. We have experience managing multi-species societies. We know how to create systems where everyone benefits according to their abilities and interests. You mean you know how to control us? Ryu looked genuinely puzzled. Why do you see control and cooperation as different things? We study your psychology so we can give you what makes you happy. We study your biology so we can keep you healthy. We study your culture so we can preserve what you value most, while making sure we serve your interests. While making sure everyone's interests are served efficiently, Kale, your species spent centuries fighting each other over resources and territory. Under human guidance, those conflicts become unnecessary. We can calculate optimal resource distribution. We can design social systems that minimize conflict. It sounded almost reasonable. That was what made it so terrifying. What if we don't want to be guided? Kale asked. Ryu's expression didn't change. That would be unfortunate, but also unlikely, once you understand the benefits. We've studied 17 different species so far. None of them chose conflict over cooperation once they saw how much better life could be. 17 species? Kale's scales went completely black. How many species are you studying? All of them, eventually. The galaxy is full of intelligent life. Most of it is wasted on inefficient societies and destructive conflicts. We can fix that. Fix it how? By understanding it completely. By learning how each species thinks, what they want, what makes them happy. By designing systems that give everyone what they need while preventing the kind of waste and conflict that has held galactic civilization back for millions of years. Kyle finally understood the scope of human ambition. They weren't trying to conquer the galaxy. They were trying to optimize it. Every species would be studied, understood, and guided into its most efficient and productive role. "You're going to turn the entire galaxy into a laboratory," he said. "We're going to turn the entire galaxy into a garden," Ryu corrected, "where every species can flourish according to its nature under wise management. Human management. Of course, we're the only species that has developed the scientific methods necessary for this kind of comprehensive social engineering." Kyle realized that resistance was not just futile, it was counterproductive. Every time a species fought back against human guidance, it just provided more data about their psychology and tactics. The humans would learn from the resistance and design better methods of control. They had turned the entire galaxy into their laboratory. And every intelligent species was their test subject.